In September 2017, Jim Carrey stood on a red carpet and told a reporter that he didn't believe he existed at all. Many assumed he was unraveling, that years of grief, legal battles, the death of his former girlfriend Catriona White, and a depression he'd carried since the 1980s had finally caught up with him. Not long after, he all but disappeared from public life. Then, in 2026, he resurfaced, this time with a woman by his side that almost no one had seen before. She had reportedly been part of his life for 4 years already. To understand why that moment on the red carpet felt so loaded, it helps to go back to the beginning. Jim Carrey was born James Eugene Carrey on January 17, 1962, in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada. His family eventually settled near Scarborough, close to Toronto, and money was always tight. His father, Percy Carrey, was a talented saxophone player, but talent alone didn't pay the bills, a lesson Jim absorbed early. Around age 12, that lesson became brutal reality when his father lost his job at a tire factory. For a stretch, the family lived out of a Volkswagen van, and some accounts say Jim and his brother even spent time in a tent near Lake Ontario. This wasn't an adventure, it was survival. Ordinary teenage milestones, sports, dating, fitting in, weren't really on the table for Jim. He was focused on getting through each day and helping his family stay afloat. Eventually, the Carreys landed a house across from the same tire factory, but only because the whole family agreed to work there as janitors and security staff. As a teenager, Jim worked overnight shifts of roughly 8 hours, then tried to function at school the next day. The exhaustion took a toll. His grades and mood suffered, and on his 16th birthday, in 1978, he dropped out. Around that same period, at just 15, he tried stand-up for the first time at a comedy club in Toronto, dressed in a suit his mother had sewn for him. The set flopped, and he left the stage in silence, the kind of failure that ends a lot of teenage dreams. Instead, Jim treated it as a lesson rather than a verdict, studying timing, expression, and audience reaction until the failure sharpened rather than stopped him. With no diploma and no fallback plan, comedy became the only road left. In 1981, at 19, he left Canada for Los Angeles with almost nothing. No money, no connections, no guarantees. He worked open mics and, by some accounts, occasionally slept in his car while trying to get noticed. The turning point came when Rodney Dangerfield noticed his act and brought him on as an opening act, giving Carrey his first real exposure to large audiences. Even so, the 1980s were far from kind. He auditioned for Saturday Night Live twice and was rejected both times, reportedly written off before he even had a fair shot. Then came a flash of promise. In 1984, he landed the lead in the NBC sitcom The Duck Factory. It should have been his breakthrough. Instead, the show aired for just 3 months before cancellation. Through the rest of the decade, Carrey bounced between stand-up gigs and small acting roles, never quite breaking through. In 1987, in a moment that says a lot about his mindset, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, dated years in the future, and carried it in his wallet as a reminder of where he intended to end up. It's often noted that in 1994 he actually earned close to that amount for Dumb and Dumber, proof, in his telling, less of luck than of stubborn belief. The real shift came in 1990 when Carrey joined the Fox sketch show In Living Color, which ran until 1994. As the only white regular in a cast built around black talent, he had no shortcut to relevance. He had to earn his spot through sheer performance. His most memorable creation from that era, Fire Marshal Bill, reportedly grew out of a rejected, much darker sketch concept that he reworked into something wild and disturbing in the best way. Colleagues have described him staying in character between takes, fully committing even when the cameras weren't rolling, a sign of how deeply he threw himself into a role, even then. Off camera, though, life was far less stable. Strain in his first marriage, financial pressure, and his father's declining health were all unfolding at the same time his career was finally taking off. Then came the explosion of 1994. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective opened in February on a modest $15 million budget and pulled in more than $100 million worldwide, despite lukewarm reviews. Less than 6 months later, The Mask arrived, using early CGI to turn Carrey's rubber-faced physicality into something close to animated, and it became his biggest hit of the year at roughly $350 million worldwide, also marking Cameron Diaz's screen debut. By December, Dumb and Dumber added another $250 million. In the span of less than a year, Carrey had gone from scraping by to reportedly commanding $7 million per film. What audiences didn't see was what Carrey was carrying privately. He later said he had relied on antidepressants for long stretches, describing his emotional life as a pattern of highs and prolonged lows. Some of his biggest comedic triumphs happened while he was quietly managing serious depression. That contrast became more visible once he pushed into drama, landing a role in The Truman Show, 1998, wasn't automatic. Hollywood still saw him mainly as a comedy performer, and he had to fight for a screen test with director Peter Weir, who later called it the best audition he'd ever seen. The film earned Carrey a Golden Globe, but the Oscar nomination many expected never came. His Golden Globe speech was memorably raw, funny, awkward, and clearly emotional, a sign that recognition as a serious performer meant more to him than he'd let on, and that missing an Oscar nod stung more than the win soothed. His commitment to disappearing into a role peaked with Man on the Moon, 1999, in which he played Andy Kaufman. During the 5-month shoot, he reportedly stayed in character continuously, even slipping into Kaufman's abrasive alter ego Tony Clifton between takes. A process co-star Danny DeVito later described as unsettling, since it didn't feel like acting so much as losing himself in someone else entirely. Physical endurance became its own trial during How the Grinch Stole Christmas, 2000. The makeup process took over 8 hours on the first day and still ran about 2.5 hours each morning, plus an hour to remove, across a 92-day shoot. Carrey has said it felt like being buried alive, and the production reportedly brought in a specialist who had trained people to endure high-stress situations just to help him get through the process mentally. By 2004's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the emotional rawness felt personal rather than performed. Director Michel Gondry reportedly wanted Carrey, then freshly out of a breakup, to draw on that real heartbreak for the role, and Carrey has said he felt genuinely hollowed out at the time. Many critics still consider it his finest dramatic work, in part because the pain reads as lived in rather than acted. That brings the story back to September 2017, when Carrey gave one of the strangest celebrity interviews in years, telling a reporter that nothing had inherent meaning and that he didn't believe he existed as a fixed self, describing identity as a construct built from labels like nationality and name. Nobody was quite sure whether he was joking, unraveling, or expressing a genuine philosophical shift. By then, he had already been drifting from the traditional Hollywood machine, throwing himself into painting, often dark, politically charged work, as an outlet. The moment read less like a breakdown and more like a public rejection of celebrity identity itself. That same emotional undercurrent shaped Kidding, 2018 to 2020, the Showtime series in which Carrey played a beloved children's TV host whose life is quietly falling apart behind a cheerful public image. Reports suggest he helped shape the project partly as a way of processing grief after Catriona White's death. The show ran 2 seasons and brought him a 7th Golden Globe nomination, and its central image, a man smiling through collapse, struck many as uncomfortably close to how the public already saw Carrey himself. After 2022's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Carrey suggested he was seriously considering retirement, saying that after roughly 35 years of inhabiting characters, the work had become spiritually draining, and that any future project would need to matter enormously to pull him back. He spoke about wanting to step back from public life in favor of painting and personal relationships. Nearly 3 years passed before he re-emerged in a major public way, inducting Soundgarden into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Los Angeles in November 2025. Observers noted he seemed calmer and more grounded than the hyperactive public image most people carried of him, a fitting reappearance, given that his connection to the band dated back to 1996, when he had pushed for them to appear as musical guests during his stint hosting Saturday Night Live. Then came the bigger reveal. Carrey and a woman known publicly as Mina had first been photographed together in February 2022, leaving a charity comedy event in Los Angeles, though the sighting drew little attention at the time. Described in later reports as an artist and actress based in Los Angeles, Mina kept a notably low public profile, with almost no visible social media presence, which may explain how the relationship stayed largely out of the spotlight for roughly 4 years. The reveal became official in Paris on February 26, 2026, when Carrey received an honorary César at the 51st César Awards. Partway through a speech delivered partly in French, he said simply that he loved her. Reports describe the room going